Hello, and welcome to another Spook-tober review. That's right, the frights will continue as we now look into a much more scarier piece of film. That's right, lock up your doors, Salem, because Disney has done it again. They have unleashed Hocus Pocus 2! Okay, so okay, I guess I should give my thoughts on what I thought of the original, the very first one. Um, I'm not a huge, like a very huge, like, I love the movie. No. But I will say this, I am a very casual viewer of it. Like, I would definitely deem it like a Halloween classic. Like, if I'm gonna go with my Halloween season, am I gonna watch the original? Sure, why not? It's a very fun movie. The pacing is very nice, very fast. The actors are giving their all. It's very enjoyable, very serviceable popcorn fluff. And you know what? I'm all there for it. And that's my general thoughts on the original. Nothing too spectacular. It does have its problems. It's a bit clunky in some areas, but overall, very enjoyable film. But then you get stuff like Hocus Pocus 2. And I will say, when they first announced it, I was not happy. I was like, really? You're like making a sequel to this? Disney? Are you kidding me? Yeah. And then the trailer didn't really help that much at all either. I thought I was gonna hate this movie. I was really not looking forward to it. It was like one of those movies where I thought I could go the whole year without listening to. But then, I go out, talk with my friends, I go online, I go watch another TV at my house, and still people talk about it. So, of course, sooner or later, I had to face that I was going to watch it. So, I put my projector screen on, dimmed the lights, started the movie, and you know what? I can safely say it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Yeah, and that's just my general thoughts right there. Honestly, the one thing I'm very surprised at, and maybe somewhat relieved, is how undercooked and forgettable it is. That might just be the one criminal act this movie might make. Let me explain. In terms of the actual plot, it's essentially an undercooked remake, or I should say reboot, of the original. What's the plot? Well, like in the original, a virgin lights the black flame candle. The Sanderson sisters are back, and they're here to do the same shtick as usual. I mean, they do change a few elements, like instead of like just a bunch of kids, it's apparently teenage witches. Cool, I guess. I don't know. And also, they don't just want to, like, cook up a potions to eat children. No, they also want to apparently get revenge on the mayor because apparently he's a descendant of the Reverend who threw them out when they were younger. I'll talk more about that later. So essentially, the plot revolves around the teenage girls to band together in order to stop the Sandersons from enacting their revenge while also trying to unlock the power of Magica Maxime, I think, in order to become the most powerful witches of all time. Cool. So, with that in mind, that's the plot. In terms of this movie, like I said, nothing too special. Again, it's serviceable fluff. And not like the original, where at least it was tightly paced, very fast, very enjoyable, very charismatic, just very jeweled in this kind of weird Halloween ghoulishness and cheesiness, that weird, cool combination that I could just really get behind. This one, it's just any other freaking sequel, remake, or I should say legacy sequel, I guess you should say, to boot. It's very undercooked. The plot, I will say, it's not really that original in terms of just what they change doesn't really differ that much. But I will say what they do change and what they do tackle in this film is very interesting. But I do want to talk about the good stuff first. I do want to talk about the first 15 or maybe 10 minutes of this movie because I thought those were arguably, weirdly, the strongest part of this movie. Because we usually open up with the Sanderson sisters as actual little girls, like when they're in the younger years. And we actually get to see them meet up with the witch, find out how they were banished from Salem, see how they got into witchcraft. And I will say this, I'm gonna single out those three little girls who played the younger versions because man, they knock it out of the park. I'm not joking. That might just be the best actors in this movie because it is very difficult to get down the mannerisms, the movements, the timing of three gigantic Halloween icons, and for them to do it in such a little bit of time. They relish every single moment. And man, I wish this movie was actually more about them. That's how weird an experience this is. 10, maybe 15 minutes of three young Sanderson sisters. If this was actually the plot of the movie, like a weird side origin-ish tale, diving into the younger years, exploring how they become witches, talking about Billy Butcherson, how they get banished from Salem, I get this could be interesting. But of course, they toss it aside like wet cardboard, and we instead get our half-baked plot not too soon later. And since it is a comedy, I do want to talk about the comedy because it really is hit or miss. Um, Bette Midler and the rest of the Sanderson gang, they're all having a blast. I can tell they're having a lot of fun. I can tell on screen. They're just relishing every single moment, and I love that about them. I thought they were easily one of the highlights of the original. With that said, I also need to acknowledge that it's been almost 30 years since the original came out. The original came out in 1993. And it worked back then because they were much younger, they had a lot of energy, they had a lot of charisma, a lot of charm. So of course they bubbled up the screen, they energized it, which allowed me and a lot of other people to really enjoy it again and hooked. It maybe somewhat rooting for them to win. It's a little. With that said though, they're not as energetic or mobile. And they just kind of just like, you know, it's like, that's kind of like that. But I will say this, considering how a lot of people criticize them being like they're not being able to do a lot, I will say they have the same charm. Like I am laughing at most of their jokes, and I like that. So again, they are of course a good like most of the good stuff from this movie does come from the Sandersons, which is good because Hocus Pocus was mainly about the Sandersons, so you get them right, you get a pretty decent movie. So I'm glad they at least got that down good. With that said, though, the actual leads are nothing that special. They're just older children pretending to be teenagers in high school. And I'm not going to say they're horrible at acting, they're just not given pretty good material. Um, Heck, I just watched the movie and I just realized I don't remember a single name. Wait. I remember this name, Cassie. You know why I remember Cassie? Here's why. Because in a weird turn of events, the witches find out that Cassie is the daughter of the mayor, who is actually a descendant of the Reverend. And like I said earlier, the first 10 minutes, we find out that the Reverend banished the Sanderson sisters from Salem. So, of course, they want to end the bloodline, so they get Cassie. But earlier in the movie, we established in high school that Cassie used to be part of their own little coven in terms of the witch girls, whatever. Um, and the weird part is, aside from the main opening, she's barely in the movie. Like, she's scattered here and there. They're explaining she's at a party that her boyfriend insisted on throwing and not her, despite her inviting her friends, despite one of them being in her 16th birthday. What? What am I watching? What? Who makes these decisions? Ugh. Ugh. So yeah, um, and it's not like we really get to know them and their personalities, just more so. And at least I get to know their backstory, which I'll give credit. We at least I get their story. Whereas with She-Hulk, I can't even remember. I think she did one college video. About as much as I remember about her character from that show. But with that said, the actresses aren't horrible. They're very serviceable. They do good with what they have in front of them. And I'll give them that. With that said, though, it is kind of weird. I will say this. There is a bit of a downer with the jokes because every now and then, like I said, with every hit, there seems to be a miss. And most of the misses come from extending a joke. Like, earlier in the film, and I know another critic talked about this earlier in another review, is that, oh, crap, I forget her name. Okay, I'm just gonna call her Betty Midler's, which character, I forget her name, I'm sorry. Apparently she left the Reverend, apparently she was running away from the Reverend because she did not want to marry his son. And she says, why would I marry him? I don't want to marry him. And the son's like, oh, thank God. Already there is a pretty funny joke, but it keeps going. He explains why he's having it. He's like, oh, thank God. Oh, no. I know, no offense, but your face is so ugly. It's disgusting. It's morphed. And I'm like, you had a pretty good joke. You just kept on going. Why? And I know that's one example, but that's a lot of the joke, every other joke in this movie, or at least the ones that really stood out to me in terms of, and they're not really hitting me, is because initially it's a good punch, it's a good joke, but they drag it out, allowing it not to sit with me, or just not enough time for me to catch it. Like, no, if anything, it just makes me bored and just waiting for me to finally relish when I see the closing credits. And that reminds me, there's a freaking post-credit scene like they're teasing another movie. Because apparently one of the shopkeeper in the movie has a black cat that reminds the witches of Banks, but it's not him. It's just a regular black cat. And in a weird twist, it's also revealed the shopkeeper who was friends with the witch girls gave them a black candle to light for him because he always wanted to meet the Sandersons, because apparently he also witnessed the Sandersons during the first movie. What? I'm sorry. Well, what? Okay. This is stupid on a lot of levels. And even then, it's kind of weird because I only just realized now that aside from the Sandersons and Doug Jones returning as Billy Butcherson, no one else from the original movie returned for this sequel. Like, your three main leads from the original have their characters. The actors are not here. Their characters are never mentioned, and you only get to see maybe a reference to them, like, oh yeah, I heard they were back again in 1993. It's about as much as a reference as you're getting to the original, so screw you, friggin' legacy sequel. Ugh. With that said, there's also another weird thing. Like I said, they weirdly homage the sequel by using the archive footage from the movie as flashbacks. Now, I will not mind this, as it's a very good way to recap and reuse footage as information to redeliver to the audience in case we might have seen it in a while. Okay, you might have seen it. Oh no, you might have just seen it recently. Because who doesn't watch Hocus Pocus? I mean, maybe someone doesn't, but granted, most people would tend to watch it. So, with that in mind, I would not be bothered by that as much, but then also, for some weird reason, they decide to use that same archive footage and then put it on a TV monitor that a little kid is watching. Then one of the witches also looks at it too as they pass by, and I'm like, wait, what? So, you're telling me that not only did this happen in reality in this real world, but apparently there's also a movie made out about it with the same footage. But what? I'm getting confused as to the world you're not even building, you're continuing. Well, how can you confuse me? It's a simple story. What do we want in a Hocus Pocus sequel? What do we want? We want to see Betty Midler. We want to see the Sandersons. We want to see them be charming. We want to see them get freaking high on wanting to get children. Ooh, let's get children. We want to see that. We want to see craziness. We want to see good, charming, nice, good jokes. That's a pretty, maybe hour-long special at most. Maybe you can get out of it. Yeah, so this movie has a lot of plot holes and has a lot of stuff going around, but ultimately comes with a weird, and again, like going back to the post-credits scene, they weirdly tease at continuing the story, because like I said before, the shopkeeper gave the kids the candle to light. And it's revealed at the end that apparently there's another black flame candle. So they hint at a sequel, but earlier in the movie, they confirmed the witches are gone for good. Like, as I was thinking, okay, wait a second, are they totally gone now? Because we saw them explode, and all three explode in the first movie. And here, I'm not kidding, the end game, them. Like, they literally just turned to dust. Like, Thanos snapped his fingers and wished them out of existence. Like, that's how they go out. And they confirm that most likely they're not coming back, despite them confirming there's another candle hinting they can come back. I'm like, what are you trying to tell us? This world, these rules, your story, it's making no sense. And if anything, that's the frustrating thing about this movie. The plot. It's, if anything, overcomplicating itself and oversimplifying itself at the same time. It's very weird like that. But, and again, that's the real large thing hindering this movie. With that said, though, I will acknowledge it is nicely directed. A lot of the shots are actually pretty cool. There's some nice tracking shots over Salem. I originally really did appreciate it. And I really did like the set designs, and of course, again, the Sandersons, and again, Doug Jones as Billy Bridgerton. They're all a lot of fun. And again, I really enjoyed the opening. Heck, I might actually go back and just rewatch the opening itself. It's actually a lot of fun for me. But in terms of if you're a die-hard fan of the original, would you want to go see this? I honestly don't know. I'm not a die-hard fan myself, but as a casual viewer who really enjoys watching the original, if I had to pick the original versus the new one, I am no way going to remember the new one. I would rather just watch the original, turn my brain off, have a good time. Simple. And I am not, like, trying to trash this sequel, because, trust me when I say, I've seen a lot worse movies. There are a lot worse movies that nostalgia bait you into tricking you to thinking this is a good movie, when in actuality, it's not. So with that said, I acknowledge that it is very underdeveloped, but does manage to rekindle some of the charm and cheekiness that we all kind of enjoyed from the first movie. So, I think, I'm pretty sure I've settled on my score for this. I am gonna give Hocus Pocus 2 2.5 out of 5 lightsabers. It's a very passable adventure. Is it one really worth taking? No. But if you are curious, I say go ahead. There's no harm in watching it. But I do sadly have to say, for a Hocus Pocus movie, it's very forgettable. And arguably, that might be one of the worst things you could do with a Hocus Pocus sequel. I mean, you could do a lot worse. But if I could have a catastrophe I could remember, compared to a maybe safe film like this, that's just, I don't know which one I'd choose, to be honest. But hey, there's always the original. That's my thoughts on the new Hocus Pocus movie. Actually, what did you guys think of this movie? I'm hearing really mixed reactions. I know critics got into this a lot more, but fans are not. So I'm very curious to see where you guys fit into this. Well, what did you think? Did you watch? Did you stream it on Disney Plus? Did you like it? Did you think it was as good as the original? Did you think that Disney never should have made this? Never even should have touched the property? Never should have bothered it to begin with? I would very much like to know. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Please like and subscribe, and I will do my best to ensure that I can post another Spook-tober review as soon as possible. For now, take care, and more importantly, get your fright on.